Today I'm going to talk about some homework questions from section 1.3 from the practice of statistics. So we're wrapping up the chapter, we're almost done. We're going to talk about number 89, 99, 101, 103, and 109. The first question we had was on number 89, but you'll notice immediately that it says refer to exercise 79. So I put both of them up here. We're not going to do 79 and calculate the mean, but we do need these lists of quiz grades. Let's go ahead and put these quiz grades in order so that way we'll be able to actually find and interpret the interquartile range like we're asked. So the first one is a 74. And then it looks like I have a 75 and a 76, and I will keep going. Now I have all the quiz grades listed in order. Oh, although I realized I missed 91, so I need to add that in there. It needs to be a 91 right there. Okay, I think I was actually missing 2 numbers. Now I have 14 numbers. It's always good to count and make sure you have it. So 14 quiz grades. Alright, so in order to find the interquartile range, I actually am going to have to find Q1 and Q3. So I would rather actually find first the median so that I can find Q1 and Q3. So there's 14 things. If I divide that by 2, that gives me 7. Let me count in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And from the other side, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you'll notice that 84 and 86 are right in the middle. And that means that I'm going to need to find the average of those two. So clearly 85 is in the middle of those, but if it wasn't as obvious, you would add the 2 together and divide by 2. So 85 is going to be my median. Alright, and then here's what you do when you have an even number like this. I'm actually going to include 84 in the first half, and I'm going to include 86 in the second half. So remember to find Q1, quartile 1, it's almost like the median of the first half. So I have 7 things here in the first half. So that means if I count 3, 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, you'll notice that 78 is right smack in the middle. That's quartile 1. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. 1, 2, 3. Oops, I messed up. So notice I accidentally left off the 86. So I'm going to go back and actually count the 86 this time. So 86 is 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So notice I have 3 on each side. So Q3 is 91. Now IQR, which stands for the interquartile range, is defined as Q3 minus Q1. And the reason is because, remember, the reason we're finding these quartiles is we're trying to find where 25% of the data lies. So 25% of the data comes below Q1. Another 25% of the data is between Q1 and the median. Another 25% is between the median and Q3, and another 25% is after Q3. So Q1 minus Q3 is essentially the middle 50%. Like that's what the IQR is giving me. It's a nice measure of spread because it doesn't get affected by outliers because it's just the numbers that are in the middle 50%. So I'm going to do 98 minus 78, and I should get 13. So the IQR is 13. Interpreting it would mean that the spread, or the middle 50% of the data, lies between 13 quiz points. Okay, the next thing we need to do is find outliers. So what I'm going to do is like shrink all of this so I have a little more space. To find outliers, I need to do the 1.5 IQR rule. So 1.5 times 13 is where I need to start. And I'm going to subtract that from Q1, and then I'm going to also add that to Q3. So this is 19.5. This is kind of like the distance that I can go from Q1 and go from Q3. So my lower boundary is going to be Q1 minus 19.5. Remember Q1 was 78. So if I do 78 minus 19.5, I get 58.5. Okay, this is going to be my lower bound, or my lower limit. And then I need to find the upper limit by adding to Q3. So 19.5 plus 91 is 110.5. And this is going to be my upper bound. So now what I do is I look at all of my numbers, and I see that 98 is my max, and that is not above this one. So there's going to be no upper outliers. No outliers on the right half. And actually 58.5, that's way lower than our lowest grade of 74. So there's going to be no lower outliers either. If I was having to write on an AP test, I would need to actually put this into a sentence. So I'm going to say there are no outliers by the 1.5 IQR rule. And then of course I have my work shown, so they're going to want to see your work to like prove the statement. All right, I especially wanted to go over number 19 because it gives us a computer output where you can see like this stuff right here, that's computer output. And you have to be able to read different kinds of computer outputs for the AP test and also for my test. So the first question is, what would you guess is the shape of the distribution based on the computer output? For me personally, I tend to look at the mean and the median for this the most. So notice, I'm going to highlight, the mean is 34.70 and the median is 20.85. That means the mean is pulled out to the right from the median. If this was relatively symmetric, then those two should be approximately equal. Like they'll be at least around the same thing, but the mean is a good bit higher. Another kind of telltale sign that this is going to be skewed to the right is looking at the quartiles. So notice Q1 is at 19.5. That's not that far away from the median, which the median again is 27.85. But look at Q3. Q3, 45.72. That's a lot farther to the right of the median than Q1 is. So to me, that indicates that the right half of the data is like really stretched out. So we're probably going to have something that looks like that, where it's like skewed off to the side. So for part A, I would say that, let's go ahead and get in a good habit here. So when you say the distribution, say what it is of for our context. So the distribution of amounts spent by grocery shoppers. I just looked at the problem again to see that. Is skewed to the right. And I'm going to put here mean greater than median, so it's like we can tell that it's pulling it to the right. All right, interpret the value of the standard deviation. This is also really important. You guys have to be able to interpret standard deviation. I've told you before that it's the average distance from the mean, so you can use those words. I love to use the phrase typically varies, because like that's saying like it's an average distance from the mean. It typically varies from this much. So we need a context again. So for part B, we would say something like the amount of money spent, because that's what we're talking about here. Typically varies from the mean by $21.70. That's that standard deviation up there. This is a good script probably to know. The amount of money typically varies from the mean by da-da-da. Or you could say the average distance from the mean is $21.70. I think that would be okay too. But I think this one makes more sense. It's nice. Are there any outliers? Justify your answer. So as we know, we are going to have to do Q1 minus 1.5 times the IQR. And then we're also going to have to do Q3 plus 1.5 times the IQR. Rather than writing it out in steps, I'm going to just kind of write it all out at one time. So looking up there, I see that Q1 is 19.06. And the IQR is going to be Q3 minus Q1. So the IQR is 26.66. Okay, so I have this. And then over here, I'm going to do Q3, which is 45.73. And notice I'm just looking, or 72. I'm just looking at that table up there, times 26.66. It turns out that the lower bound is like a negative number. It's negative 20.93, which they're not spending a negative amount of money. That doesn't make sense. So we don't have an outlier on the lower side. On the upper side, this is 85.71. And so we actually do have an outlier, and the only information that we have is this 93.35 or 34. And that's what we had as a maximum. And that is bigger than this. That's greater than the 85.71. So I would say for part C, and again, the work is important to show. The max of 93.34, I'll go ahead and put a dollar sign in front, is greater than the upper bound of 85.71. So by the 1.5 IQR rule, $93.34 is an outlier. Okay, we're going to tackle 101 and 103 on this same one. I realize that 102 here is in the middle, but that is okay. Let's just ignore that one for now. Let's look at 103. The IQR is the interquartile range a resistant measure of spread. Give us an example of a small data set. Okay, so resistant means like outlier doesn't affect. I've actually kind of already talked about this in an earlier problem. But let's give an example of a small data set. So let's do something small. Let's say that I have 2, 4, 4, 5, and 6. Okay. I might actually add a couple more numbers to this. Let's say then I have 6 and 7. Trying to make it easy. So right now, the median would be 5. Q1 would be 4. Q3 would be 6, because see how like these are in the mid, 6 is in the middle and 4 is in the middle of those. So the IQR would be 6 minus 4, which is 2. Now, let's show with a small data set what happens when we add an outlier. So let's suppose, an outlier could be to the left or to the right, but let's suppose I do that. So I've just added a 20 to this list. The middle is going to fall in between these two. That's my median. And now my Q1 is going to fall in between these two, which is 4. My Q3 is going to fall between 6 and 7, which is 6.5. So my new IQR is 6.5 minus 4, which is 2.5. And that is not that different than 2. So you can see that the IQR is a resistant measure. All right, so the IQR, this is a measure of spread, by the way, or variability. Remember, that's another word for spread. And so is standard deviation. So this question right here is going to be good for talking about standard deviation. Standard deviation is the average distance from the mean. So the more spread out the numbers are, the bigger the standard deviation is, because the mean will end up in the middle and then all the other numbers are spread out from it, which will affect the standard deviation. So we can choose 4 numbers that are between 0 and 10, and we are allowed repeats. How nice of them. And we want the smallest possible standard deviation for part A. There's multiple answers for this, but I'm thinking 3. What if these were my 4 numbers? Let's think for a minute. What would the average be? 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 divided by 4 would be 3. And what's the average distance from the mean? 0. All the numbers are 3, so they're all exactly equal to the mean. And so really we could put any 4 numbers in a row here, and this would be the smallest standard deviation. The next question is asking kind of the opposite. It's saying choose 4 numbers that have the largest possible standard deviation. So to me, I'm thinking like spread out. So if I see largest, I want it to be really spread out. The most spread out I can be is 0 and 10. And since they said I could repeat numbers, I'm going to say 0, 10, 0, 10, or 0, 0, 10, 10. It doesn't matter the order. Think about this for a second. If I add up 0 plus 0 plus 10 plus 10, that's 20, and I divide it by 4, I get 5. So my standard deviation is right smack in the middle at 5, but my numbers are all here, 0 and 10. So this is like as spread out as you possibly could be. And then lastly, we can talk about part C. Is there more than one choice possible in either A or B? Explain. Kind of already said this. So for part A, we had 4 numbers that were all the same. You could have any 4 numbers that are all the same, and that would work for part A. So there are multiple answers that work. But for part B, there's not multiple answers that work because we want to be the most spread out as possible in order for the standard deviation to be really wide. The last question is number 109. It's another IQR question. Well, not an IQR question, it's an outlier question, but in order to find an outlier, we're going to have to do the 1.5 IQR rule, right? So we need to find the IQR. But if we need to find the IQR, we need to find the median. So they said there were 30. So in my mind, that means I'm going to have 15 on one side and 15 on the other side. So I'm just going to actually count the numbers up. I'm going to put little dots on them. Maybe you'll see them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, and then just to make sure that I'm doing it right, I'm going to count 15 from the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Notice both 15s fell right here. That's 154, because if it's basically like 100. If we did a list, we would have 154 and 154 right next to each other, and of course the middle of 154 would be 154. So my median is 154. And I did the different colors to kind of help us keep these separate from each other. So if I was trying to split 15 into 2 pieces, like that would be 7.5. So I'm basically going to have 7 on one side, 7 on the other side, and 1 in the middle. Like I just do 15 divided by 2, and I'm like, oh, that's 7.5. So 7 on one side, 7 on the other side, and then 1 in the middle. So with the red dots, I'm going to count 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It looks like this one's going to be the middle, but let's double check the reds. The other reds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes. So Q1 is 117. Do y'all see that? I'm going to do the same thing with my green dots. I'm going to count to 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it looks like this one's the middle, but let's try the other ones, starting with a 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Being very thorough. Okay, I know I kind of covered that up a little bit accidentally, but that's a 173 right there. Okay, so 173 is my Q3. And I need to find the IQR. 173 minus 117. Once I have my IQR, I can multiply it by 1.5. This is 56. So I need to do Q1 minus 1.5 times 56. So 154 minus 1.5 times 56, which is 70. And then I'm also going to do Q3 plus 1.5 times 56 to do the upper boundary. And let's see, Q3 was 173. Which is going to give me 257. And now I'm going to look at my numbers over here. So it looks like the lowest number we have is a 91. And the highest number we have is 222. So that means that none of them are considered outliers. Let me see if I did something wrong. Okay, I didn't read the question. That's important. Home run totals above what value should be considered outliers? I didn't even need to do all this stuff. It just wanted to know above what value. Basically, like what was the upper limit. So the upper limit is 257. So we don't have any outliers, but they weren't asking for us to have outliers. They were just saying what is the upper limit. The answer is 257.